Rabbi Listman.
If this gentleman doesn't come to me, I'll go to him.
Okay,
Oh,
perfect,
you don't
beautiful.
Thank you.
I've only told him
David.
Like five times.
But still, but he's feeling better.
Yeah.
You want to get it off your chest? You get it off your chest. It's on his brain. David, how are you? Good. Yofi. Renan, you're doing well. Good. You're doing well. I'm asking, how are you?
Okay. I'm fine.
Yofi. Russell, after work. Oh, you've been up all night.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's fine. I get that.
All right, let's go. Okay, Russell, you doing well?
Doing well, bro.
Okay, good.
Knocking out some biblical Hebrew homework.
Oh, all right.
Having fun with that.
Terrific. Yeah. Good stuff. They're still doing the block letters though when you're doing that biblical Hebrew thing.
Yeah, so we study with block letters, but we can actually write.
You can do the scripts. Good. Okay, good. They got you. Thomas,
Everything is good.
how are you? Moshe's sitting there, Ariel. So just come.
I'm sitting here.
Oh, you're sitting here. Great. Perfect.
Yeah.
Thomas, you're well.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we're good.
Good to see you, Ariel. Right, grab a Tanakh, will you? And sit down. We're going to have a little tour of the Tanakh. A little tour through history.
We start the book that we mentioned yesterday.
No, not all the books we mentioned yesterday. We're going to look at the book of Kings towards the end. I'm sorry to say that it's towards the end. Why am I sorry to say towards the end? It's a sad ending. Absolutely, it's a sad ending. Look at chapter 24.
Book of Kings, Aleph,
Bet. Kings, the second book of Kings, chapter 20. Let's start with 23. Chapter 23. We're going to go through a bunch of kings and see what happened. What's the date today? Anybody?
Chapter 20, you said, right?
23.
23.
Today's the 13th.
What's the real date?
Yeah.
Say again?
The 9th of Tibet.
9th of Tibet. The 9th of Tibet.
Is it Kings 1 or Kings 2?
Kings 2, verse chapter 23.
Kings 2, chapter 23. The king sent out and gathered himself.
That's it. Perfect. So this is King Yoshiyahu. This started 22. Kings 22.
Numerals 23.
Yoshiyahu.
2022.
Yeah. Kings 2:22. Okay, Yoshiyahu, what a great king. He was a young kid, as it says. Was 8 years old when he began to reign, and reigned 31 years in Jerusalem. So he grew up, and he walked in all the ways of David his father, and turned not aside to the right hand, nor to the left. And it came to pass in the 18th year of King Yoshiyahu, in verse 3 now, that the king sent Shaphan, the son of Azariah, son of Meshulam, to subscribe to the house of the Lord, saying, go up to Chilkiah, the high priest, let me sum up the silver. And he took care of the temple. Okay, King Yoshiyahu was a good guy. He was a young boy. Kings 2, chapter 22. Chapter 22. Chapter 22. I'm sorry.
He did the reform.
That's right. He also made a reform. First of all, he fixed up the temple.
Mm-hmm.
And then in Pasuk 10, something exciting happened. Or verse 9.
They find the book.
Yeah, Shaphan the scribe came to the king, and they said they took all the monies together. Oh no, verse 8 it says Chilkiah Cohen tells to Shaphan the Sofer, Sefer Torah Matzati Beveit Hashem. I found the book in the house of the Lord. I'm not sure what the book was, but he goes on to in verse 11. Vayikishmu Melech et divrei Sefer Torah vayikrat bagav. When the Shaphan read it before the king heard the words of the book of the Torah and he rent his clothes. Wow, what a reaction. Some people say it was the rebuke section scroll. And he realized they're not doing what they should be doing. So he called everybody in verse 13, He says to them, "Go and inquire for the Lord for me and for the people and for all of Yehuda concerning the words of this book that is found. For great is the wrath of the Lord that is kindled against us, because our fathers have not hearkened to the words of this book. So do according to all that is written concerning us." Chilkiah the priest, Achikam, Achbo, Shaphat, Asaiah. He got a whole team. Went to hold of the prophetess. It was a prophetess, wife of Shalom, son of Tivia. Tikva, the son of Harchas, keeper of the wardrobe. Now she dwelt in Jerusalem, the second quarter, and they spoke with her, and she said to them, "Thus says the Lord God of Israel, tell the man that sent you to me, thus says the Lord, behold, I will bring evil upon this place, and what has happened, even all the words of the book which the king of Judah has read." Right? Obviously, this is why some people say that that's the section they found, the Tochacha, because it's going to, the rebuke, it describes all the bad things that's going to happen to Judah. Because they have forsaken me and have burnt incense to other gods, that they might provoke me to anger me with all the works of their hands. Therefore my wrath shall be kindled against this place and shall not be quenched. But the king of Judah who sent you to inquire of the Lord, thus you should say to thus says the Lord, your God of Israel, regarding the words which thou hast heard, because thy heart was tender and thou hast humbled thyself before the Lord, and thou dost hear what I spoke against this place and against all its inhabitants, that they should become a desolation and a curse, and thou hast rent thy clothes and wept before me. I have also heard thee, says the Lord. Behold, just get the door. Behold, therefore, we'll gather thee. I'm in verse 20 now, at the end of chapter 22. We'll gather thee unto thy fathers, and thou shalt be gathered into the grave in peace. I shall not see all the evil which I will bring upon this place. So the prophetess says the rebuke's going to come, and you're going to do good things, and you're going to, see good things in your lifetime, but afterwards, basically, you're only going to be able to prevent the destruction from coming for a little while. And we read in the book of Yirmiyahu also how he ultimately, the end of Yoshiyahu was a little sad that he was killed in battle, and Yoshiyahu dies. But he before he dies, he really tries to get all the people to do tshuva. He tries to prevent the destruction from coming, as you can see in the next chapter, chapter 23. He did lots of tshuva, amazing things. But it wasn't that we read this section on Tisha B'av, the day we commemorate the destruction, and there it says the following. Take a look in chapter 23. Now, everybody with me? Okay, Kings 2, chapter 23. And King sent King Yoshiyahu.
What's kings? Oh, you mean Menachem?
And they gathered him to all the elders of Yehuda and Yerushalayim. I am sorry, I should be using Hebrew. I apologize. And the king went up to the house of the Lord, and all the men of Yehuda and all the inhabitants of Jerusalem with him, the priests, the prophets, and all the people, both small and great. Wow. He made a big conference, a big gathering, all of the people of Judah. That's pretty impressive, right? So he made a big revival meeting, if you can. Sorry about the association. And he read in their ears all the words of the book of the covenant, which was found in the house of the Lord. And the king stood by a pillar, made a covenant before the Lord to walk after the Lord, to keep his commandments. And it says, his statutes with all their heart and all their soul. Recognize that? All your heart and soul?
Yeah.
From the Shema, to perform the words of this covenant that were written in this book. And all the people stood to the covenant. The king commanded Chilkiah to bring out all the vessels that were made for the Baal, for the Asherah, for all the hosts of heaven. He burned them outside Jerusalem. He did a good job. He put down the idolatrous priests the kings of Judah had ordained to burn incense in the high places in the cities of Judah. He cleaned up the act in the entire kingdom of Judah. And they also that burned incense to the Baal, to the foreign idol, to the sun, to the moon, to the planets, to all the hosts of heaven. He brought out the Asherah from the house of the Lord. Wow. There's an Asherah there inside the temple. He took it outside. He brought out the Asherah and to the Kidron Valley, burned it in the valley Kidron, beat it into dust, and cast the dust upon the graves of the common people. Pulled down the house of the male prostitutes that were by the house of the Lord, and the women were covering for the Asherah. He brought all the priests out of the cities of Judah, defiled the high places where the priests had burned incense, from Geva to Beersheba, pulled down the high places of the gate. He did a lot of good stuff, taking care of all. But you can see he goes on and on. Goes on and on. The Kina says. The lament that we read on Tisha B'av, quotes a midrash that he really made a massive tshuva sweep, and he sent police from house to house to uproot, to get rid of all the idols, and people had no choice. The king sent, they got rid of all the idols, but to symbolize that it wasn't really deep in their heart, and that's why the destruction is going to come anyways. The description of the Midrash, I don't know if you've heard this before, is that they would have like double doors that would open and shut. So when the police came around checking to get rid of all the idols, they would open the doors and come in through the open doors, and then look around. There's no idols, okay? And the back of the door, they'd say, "Oh, that's a beautiful picture, beautiful artistry. You have that artistry." And the other side of it, "Oh, that's beautiful artistry, very beautiful, very nice painting." And then they'd leave because there was no idols there. And then when they closed the door, on the inside of the door, the two parts went together and they formed the shape of an idol. It's a little bit of a trick, but what that shows is coming to express, I believe, that it wasn't really deep. It wasn't internal. He made a Yoshiyahu tried to clean up the act and sweep the Avodah Zarah out from the Judah, but it was still inside. Right? People were faking. They faked it. They were forced to take out the idols, but they still tried to keep them. And so in the end, this tremendous revival didn't last long. Keep going. Yeah.
Like this passage, it's bothered me a little because like they find the book, right?
Yes.
The Torah.
Right.
And they see that they are not doing what they should do.
Mm-hmm.
Where is the oral Torah in this time?
Yeah, so it's a good question. The truth is, some Bible critics they come and say, "See, there was no Torah beforehand. They just found it."
No.
What do you mean they just found it? They didn't have a Torah. They had a written Torah. They had an oral Torah. And so, from the context, it's very easy to explain that they found a certain section of the Tochacha that maybe was lost, or it's not exactly the Sefer Torah, but I don't think it's a very difficult question. But sure, they had teachers. They had the Kohanim. They had, but they weren't listening. They weren't practicing. That was the problem.
Because the Mishnah said that like the Moshe and then
Kibbutz Torah Misinim, Torah Yoshua. Yoshua's Canaan is Canaan and Nevi'im is Saruah. Then Sheikh like that.
was with the Nevi.
Nevi'im,
with the
exactly.
kings.
Nevi'im and the kings, yes, both.
So, but the king didn't know about the oral Torah.
So no, I don't think it means that he didn't know about the oral Torah. I think the king, there were different kings. Some were better and some were worse. The Yoshiyahu was brought up from the age of 8 to be a king. He was taught by the Kohanim. Probably he knew more Torah than any of the other kings. Maybe Chizkiyahu, he says, his grandfather was the greatest king in terms of Torah scholarship. And of course, King David and King Solomon. We have traditions that they were running the courts of law, but it says there's psukim about that. In any case, we believe that there was, in parallel to what's written down here in the book, and there was traditions being passed down, and it's an unbroken chain from all the way back from hundreds of years before this, when Moshe took the Jewish people into the land of Israel. Okay. Let's go on in verse 15. Wow, you see that 16. There was all sorts of altars to foreign gods. There was graves that were on the Temple Mount. He took them out, and let's move ahead to the end of the chapter. Verse 20. He really slew all the priests of the high places. All the foreign those idol worshippers, and in verse 21. It says the king commanded everybody to do the Pesach. And here's a little bit confusing also. It says, like it says on the Book of the Covenant, from verse 22 is difficult. It says, "For surely no such Passover was held from the days of the judges that judged Israel, nor in all the days of the kings of Israel, nor all of the kings of Judah. But in the 18th year of the king Hoshea was this Passover held to the Lord in Jerusalem." So as I said, some Bible critics say, see, they didn't have Pesach before. They started it out here in the 18th year. It's not what it says. It says no such Passover. The way they celebrated this year with cleaning everything up and having everybody participate, this was perhaps a unique form and unique revival of the tradition. But
They changed the tradition in that time.
I don't know if they changed it, but they definitely renewed it. And
No, but I mean, like in the rest of the years, like they don't celebrate in, like how they should do.
probably right. That's probably they were not as careful about making the Pesach that everybody would come and everybody would do it. And then some people say it wasn't celebrated in the streets, as you're going to see that they celebrated in the streets, and they got rid of all the avodah zarah off in the streets. Anyways, Yoshia was a good guy. You see it, the verse 25. Like him was there no king before him that turned to the Lord with all his heart, with all his soul, with all his might. Recognize these words?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And according to all the Torah of Moses, Moshe, neither after him arose there any like him. Unfortunately, verse 26. Good morning.
Good morning.
Almost. Unfortunately, we're in chapter 23 of the second book of Kings, verse 26. Nevertheless, the Lord did not turn back from the fierceness of that great anger with which his anger burned against Yehuda, on account of all the provocations which Menachem had provoked Menachem, the famous son of the previous tzaddik king of Judah, Chizkiyahu. Menachem did really bad stuff, and the Lord said at that time, in the reign of Menachem beforehand, I will remove Yehuda also out of my sight, as I have removed Israel, and I will cast off the city of Yerushalayim, which I have chosen, and the house of which I said, my name shall be there. Okay, so the promise of destruction was there, and King Yoshia came and sort of as a stopgap measure for a good, he reigned for 31 years, I think it said, right? So there was a good period before the destruction, but ultimately the prophet is telling us that it was short-lived and it wasn't deep enough, is the way the traditional explanation is. The tshuva that they did was top down, but not bottom up. And so the people were still not holy enough for God to, turn back from the fierceness of that great anger, which had burned against Yehuda. And ultimately, this was all background. The Yoshiyahu then dies, as you can see in Megiddo. Servants carried him in a chariot dead from Megiddo and brought him to Jerusalem because he was, and then took over Yehoachaz, the son of Yoshiyahu. Yehoachaz was 23 years old. In verse 31, when he began to reign, he reigned for only 3 months. And he did already, in verse 32, that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, unfortunately. And Paro Necho put him in bands at Rivla, so he was already taken captive, like his father was already, shot and killed in the battle against Egypt. There's more to talk about what this battle was about. Egypt wanted to go to conquer Babylon, and the prophet actually Yirmiyahu told him, "Let them pass; they'll leave you alone. Let the Egyptian empire pass through." As you know from the map. Right, we've seen it before. To go through the land of Israel to get to Babylon, and the prophet Yirmiyahu told him, "Let him go." And this was Yoshiyahu's one failing, that he didn't listen to the prophet in the political advice, and he went out to fight against Paro Necho, that's that Paro at the time of the Egyptian empire, and they killed him. And his son was put into chains, as you can see, very quickly, to 3 months. And look in verse 34, Paro Necho made Eliakim, son of Yoshiyahu, a different son of Yoshiyahu, put him in place of Yoshiyahu's father, and turned his name to Yehoyakim. Eliakim became Yehoyakim. Fascinating when you think about what's the difference between Eliakim and Yehoyakim. These are called theophoric names. Give a fancy word.
Can you explain the word?
Theo. Theos. Theology. What does that mean? God. Theo's God. Right.
Theo
Theo.
is God.
Right. So theophoric names means that the name of a person that has a name of God attached to it. Like Yehoyakim, right? Yud, A, and the Vav and the A is one of the names of God, right? The name of God.
Yeah.
And Eliakim,
Has a true.
El is also the name of God, but he switched the name of God. It's interesting. But
Yeah, I would say that Elohim is like more the Slicha. Elokim is like more the thin part of Hashem,
Yafeh.
and
Yafeh.
Yud Kei Vav Kei is like the Chesed, like the
That's right.
loving part.
That's right. That's
So
right.
it's grace.
Yafeh.
The name is
Yafeh. We
grace.
attribute different attributes to the names of God.
Mhm.
Whatever it is, for some reason, Paro Nachol gave this his appointment, the son of the other son of Yoshiyahu, not Yehoachaz. Yehoachaz was also Yeho. And it was Eliakim. Maybe it was a name that was given to appointed leaders, to kings. Anyways, he turned Eliakim into Yehoiakim. We had a student here in Machomir just a year or two ago. He took on the name Eliakim. Eliakim was very, he changed his name was changed to Yehoiakim. I mean, it has a beautiful meaning. It means that God will establish. Ultimately, what happened? Yehoiakim gave the silver and gold to Paro and taxed the land according to the commandment of Paro. And let's go to verse 36. Yehoiakim was 25 years old and began to reign. Reigned 11 years in Jerusalem. And he did all that was evil in the sight of the Lord, according to all his fathers done. And now, unfortunately, chapter 24. This is what I was trying to get to. We're getting there. Chapter 24. The king in his days, the king Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babel, came up, and Yehoiakim became his servant. So instead of, he started off, he was appointed by the Paro, right, the empire, the Egyptian, but we can see now that Babylon took over. It took over Judah. And instead of being a vassal king of Paro and from Egypt, he's now a vassal king of Nebuchadnezzar, who was the king of Bavel, So, and he rebelled against him, and the Lord sent against him bands of Kasdim, the bands of Aram, the bands of Moab, the bands of the children of Ammon, and sent them against Judah to destroy it, according to the word of the Lord, which he spoke by his servants, the prophets. For the sins of Menachem, for the innocent blood that he shed. I'm in verse 4. And that he filled Jerusalem with innocent blood, the Lord would not pardon. Okay, so then Yehoiakim died out. And what was left?
This was before 586.
Correct.
Was before, right?
That's right. What happened after that? Verse 8, Yehoiachin was 18 years old when he began to reign. He reigned in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Nehushta. And he did all that was evil also. So Yehoiachin was the next king. And at that time, the servants of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babel, came up against Jerusalem, and the city was besieged. Okay? Hey, when does it say? Let's read. Nebuchadnezzar, king against Yehoiachin, the king of Yehuda, went out to the king of Babel, he and his mother, and his servants and his princes and officers, and the king of Babel took him in the 8th year of his reign, and he carried him out from there all the treasures of the house of the Lord, and the treasures of the king's house. He cut in pieces all the vessels of gold which Shlomo, king of Israel, made in the temple of the Lord, as the Lord had said. And he carried away all Yerushalayim, all the princes, all the mighty warriors, 10,000 exiles, all the craftsmen, and all the smiths. None remained, save the poorest sort of people of the land. And he carried away Yehoiachin to Bavel. The king's mother and king's wives, his officers, the mighty of the land, those he took away into exile from Jerusalem to Bavel, all the men of might, 7,000 craftsmen, smiths 1,000, all that were strong and apt for war. Even them the king of Babel took into exile to Bavel, and the king of Babel made Mataniah, his father's brother, king in his stead, and changed his name to Tzidkiyahu. Okay, but I was actually expecting that to have the date in that pasuk where he said Jerusalem was besieged. In verse 10, it says that but it doesn't say the date. I was looking for the date.
I think it's another.
Must be in the Chronicles. In 1 minute, we're going to flip over. I don't want to confuse everybody. We'll keep reading a little more, but you're absolutely right, Thomas, that in verse 10, that's what we're commemorating, that the siege started on the 10th. The temple was not destroyed right away. The vessels of gold were taken away later. It sort of condenses the story to here. But let's keep reading until the bitter end, then we'll see it in Chronicles, the same story, in the parallels. We'll see the differences. Verse 18. Okay, so in chapter 24, verse 18.
This is the time of Ermiel.
Yes, Yirmiyahu is the prophet at the time, correct. We can see parallel verses in Yirmiyahu. That's another place where that date might be designated. Tzidkiyahu was 21 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 11 years in Yerushalayim. And his mother's name was Chomutal, and he did that which was evil, also did that which was evil, according to all that Jehoiakim, his uncle, had done. For though through the anger of the Lord it came to pass in Yerushalayim and Yehuda, until he cast him out of his presence, Tzidkiyahu rebelled against the king of Bavel, and because of this rebellion, chapter 25 now, in the 9th year of his reign, in the 10th month, in the 10th of the month, here it is, I knew it was here, that Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babel, came, he and all his hosts, against Jerusalem, and camped against it, and they built a siege wall against it round about. So after Jehoiakim gave in to the first siege of Jerusalem, and all the temple vessels were exiled, and all the craftsmen were exiled, and all the warriors were exiled, there was a king put up by the king of Bavel, Tzidkiyahu. Mataniah turned his name into Tzidkiyahu. And he, in his, I guess, impertinence and chutzpah, he decided to try to rebel against the king of Bavel, and the king of Babylon had to come again to besiege the city. And this time we know that the bitter end is going to be not just exiling the vessels and the leadership and the warriors and all the craftsmen, but actually it's going to end up with the destruction of the temple. But this, in the beginning of chapter 25, this actually is what we're commemorating tomorrow, the 10th day of the 10th month, which is the month of Tevet, Aseret Tevet, and that's why we'll be fasting. We still have classes tomorrow.
Okay.
I won't have my coffee here. I'm cherishing every gulp today.
Is this fast just a sunrise sunset fast?
Yes.
So I can get, if I wanted to, I could get up before sunrise and like.
Yes.
A little more details on that. We're going to talk about it. It's not quite sunrise. You have to get an hour up before sunrise.
Before
It's something called
4:55 a.m.
dawn. 4:55. You're machmir. You can get away with 5:15 also, but there's different opinions about how to calculate when dawn is before sunrise. But we'll talk about that later. In any case, tomorrow is a fast day, and we're commemorating beginning of chapter 25. It came to pass the 9th year of his reign, so 9 years. King Tzidkiyahu was this vassal king. What did they have in the temple? No gold, no silver, and he left. I don't know what they made some kind of vessels, but he rebelled, and the king Nebuchadnezzar finally decided to clean up again. It's the second time that he's besieging Jerusalem, and this time they built a siege wall around it, and the city was besieged until the 11th year of Tzidkiyahu. Wait, so from the 9th year till the 11th year. Good morning. We have 2 full years almost. It's almost 2 full years. We'll see what the exact dates. What happened in the 11th year of Tzidkiyahu? In the 9th day of the 4th month. The famine prevailed, and a breach was made into the city. We actually commemorate that on the 17th of Tammuz. This is the 4th month. This is Tammuz, and we commemorate the breach of the walls on the 17th of Tammuz, because in the second temple it was on a different day. But here it says the 9th of the 4th month. We don't fast on the 9th of Tammuz. That's in the summertime, a year and a half later. And the breach was made. All the men of war fled by night away of the gate between the 2 walls. They went in the direction of the Arava. They pursued them. Ultimately, Tzidkiyahu was, as you can see, verse 6, we actually found the tunnels. It says here, right? That the king left. He fled by night. In verse 4, it says, all the men of war fled by night by the way of the gate between the 2 walls, which is by the king's garden. And so the king, Tzidkiyahu himself, also, he ran away. He tried to get away to save his skin. And somehow they had some tunnel out of Jerusalem towards the east, and they chased him. They took him over in the plains of Jericho. All the armies were scattered. They took the king, brought him up to the king of Babel, to Rivla, and they gave judgment upon him. They slew the sons of Tzidkiyahu before his eyes, and then put out his eyes. This is, as the prophet had said, and bound him with fetters of brass and carried him to Bavel. Fifth month. What month is that? The month of Av. On the 7th day of the month. When do we celebrate the destruction of the? Commemorate this destruction on the 9th of Av. That was the second temple. Also, so the dates are not precise in the first temple era. Here it says the 7th, but they say also it's still precise because it lasted for 3 days. It was started to get burnt on the 7th, but which is the 19th year of the king Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babel. Nebuchadnezzar, captain of the guard, a servant of the king of Babel, came to Jerusalem, and he burnt the house of the Lord, the king's house, and all the houses of Jerusalem, and every great house he burnt with fire. And all the army of the costume, which were captain of the guard, pulled down the walls of Jerusalem round about. Now the rest of the people that were left in the city and the fugitives fell away to the king of Babel with the remnants of the multitude, and Nebuchadnezzar and the king, the captain of the guard, carry away into exile. The captain of the guard left the poor of the land. Okay, there were some people he left. But this is ultimately, he took all the brass that was left in the temple. As you can see, we asked before, what was left? If he took all the gold and silver, there was brass, the shovels, the snuffers, the spoons, the vessels, and the brass, the fire pans, the basins, all the things which were, whatever was gold and gold and silver. The captain of the guard took away the pillars, all the different parts of the temple, and etc., etc. So, tomorrow we're going to be fasting to commemorate the destruction of the temple. Tomorrow, 10th of Tevet. What happened on the 10th of Tevet? Nothing. Nothing really happened.
Beginning of the end.
It's the beginning of the end. I like your phrase. It's the beginning of the end. What happened is that King Nebuchadnezzar a second time, and now we know it's the final time, set the siege around Jerusalem. The siege lasted for over a year and a half, until finally the walls of the city were breached. In Tammuz, 3 weeks later, the temple was destroyed. The first temple we're talking about, on the 7th of Av, and that we're going to commemorate in when's the headquarters of remembering and mourning for the temple's destruction. When do we do that in the calendar year, the Jewish calendar year? Right, and before that is Tammuz and Av. Tammuz and Av, when does that come out in the year? When in the calendar year? What season is that in?
The summer.
It's always in the summer. It's always in the summer. Here we are, we're smack in the middle of the winter. All of a sudden we got one day that's commemorating the destruction of the temple. There's actually 4 fasts to commemorate. The 2 in the summer, that's the main ones. There's the 3 weeks in between them. Between Tammuz and Av is 3 weeks. 17th of Tammuz and 9th of Av is 3 weeks. And so that, according to Ashkenazi custom, we don't have weddings. We don't shave. We don't take haircuts for 3 weeks.
That's like when we count the Omer, right?
It's more than when we count the Omer. The Omer is more, it's the opposite. Some people say that there's some customs of mourning during the Omer period, and that reminds us of the actual real period of mourning, which was in the summertime, between the 17th of Av and the 9th, 17th of Tammuz and 9th of Av. That's really the headquarters of when we mourn for the destruction of the temple. That's when it happened. What's the other 2? Right? We said those are 2 fasts for the destruction of the temple. The 10th of Tevet is one more. There's a 4th.
Some Gedalia?
Good. Excellent. The day after Rosh Hashanah, Tzom Gedalia. That's after the destruction, when the last king. We didn't get there yet, but that's at the end of the book. What is it? A few more chapters? One more chapter. You turn the page, you'll see Gedalia was killed on the next page, and we have a fast to commemorate that as well. Where is that? Oh, it's maybe on the same page.
So verse 25.
Verse 25, thank you. The seventh month is Tishrei. They killed Gedaliah, who was set up. The king of Babylon set up Gedaliah to be the leader, and he was killed by his own. And that's a 4th fast. So we there's 4 fasts to commemorate the destruction. The real time for it is during the summertime, Tammuz and Av, and then there's Elul and Tishrei. That's the leftover fast is the day after. We fast the day after Rosh Hashanah because it's Rosh Hashanah. We don't want to fast Rosh Hashanah. Nehemiah says Today is Rosh Hashanah. Go eat and drink. So we eat and drink. We like that. And we push off the fast. It doesn't say exactly what day Gedalia was killed. It just says in the month of the 7th month. Right? So usually when it says that, it means the 1st of the month. But we don't fast on the 1st of the month because it's Rosh Hashanah. We fast on the 3rd of Tishrei. In any case, the one that's out of this cycle, the one which doesn't really match in terms of its timing, is tomorrow, the 10th of Tevet. Middle of the winter. It's a year and a half before the destruction. Nothing actually happened. There was a siege around the city, but a little more. I will say a little more than what David said. It's the beginning of the end. We know now from the end, in retrospect, that the siege actually worked. Ultimately, the walls of the city were breached. But this maybe teaches us to be aware of the destruction, not only when it happens, but to be aware of the things that might bring the destruction. And that's why I started with you all the way back with King Yoshiyahu. He tried to fix up all the, we should have started really by Menachem, who was the evil guy that was so bad that God swore to destroy. And even though Yeshayahu tried to do tshuva, it wasn't enough it was enough to delay, stave off until his death, that for the destruction to actually happen. But ultimately, so this is a sign, a marker for us to be aware. Be aware, even before it happens. Be aware of the signs. According to what we learned, we should be fasting probably even an earlier date, some kind of a date when Menachem did the evil time, when that decree, and when Yoshiyahu rebelled against the prophet Yirmiyahu, but there's no date for that. But anyways, this is our tradition. The 10th of Tevet, the 10th of the month, that's the day that Nebuchadnezzar came laid the second siege, which ultimately resulted in the destruction of the temple. And that's our introduction. We didn't have to go to Divrei Yamim. We didn't have to go to Yirmiyahu. There's other psukim. We could learn Tanakh all day. But I want to stop for a minute and take your questions and speak a little more about the 10th of Tevet in practical terms, like you started to ask me, when we have to fast, what do we do, and all that. And but it's good to this is first temple time. There's psukim in the Tanakh, right? It's not just oral traditions. It's actually if you know your Tanakh, then you'll know why you're fasting tomorrow on the 10th of Tevet. Okay, questions? I'm going to go around the room. Okay, I'm going to go around.
Two questions. First, what's the difference between the two names? Again, the king that had his name changed.
Eliakim to Yehoiakim.
Yeah. And was it Nebuchadnezzar the king of Egypt that changed?
That's right, king of Egypt, Paro Necho.
What's Yehoiakim mean? Is just.
It's the same thing. It means God will establish. God will lift up. Yakim means to lift up or to establish. And Eliakim or Yehoiakim. So why he changed his name is a little unclear. It sounds like Yeho, the name Yud Kei Vav Kei was considered to be holier, considered to be more appropriate for a king. And so when he wanted to bring him into the kingship, he gave him that prefix instead of El, which is just more generic. It means might, right? The mighty God, Elohim versus Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is perhaps more name of holiness and mercy and other traits. But we don't know sure exactly why he did that, but he did that. It sounds like it was a trying to give him the prominence as the king. We know that Paro Necho very quickly he himself got destroyed, and the king Nebuchadnezzar came and took over. Yeah.
And the other, was it Hizkiyahu that you were talking about that could have brought in the Messianic era?
I didn't say that, but yeah, absolutely. The Chazal do say that Hizkiyahu, previously the king, the father of Menachem, that was really the chance we had to, make it good, but it didn't happen.
Why didn't Menachem turn? I mean, his father was so righteous. Why didn't Menachem turn out better?
Tough question. They say it's a tough question for all the rabbis. Sometimes the kids don't become rabbis, or less. And it's actually a phenomenon that you see that the public leaders many times they don't pay enough attention at home. That's a social explanation in terms of education. but spiritually, that's what happened. I don't know. Menachem was the worst king ever, and he was the son of this great tzaddik, Chizkiyahu. But ultimately, in Judaism, it's very important to realize that the kings, we've been talking about kings and this king and that king. Our approach is that the king is a reflection of the people. King, that's his job really, to be the leader of the people, to gather together all the powers of the people and to guide them, to direct them, to channel them. The king himself, he's just a tool, he's an instrument in the hand of God. He's an instrument but ultimately his power stems from the people of Israel. And if the people of Israel were sinning, like we saw King Yoshiyahu, who was a great guy, the greatest guy ever. And he, led this religious revival, and he had the tzniut police going from door to door, getting rid of the idol worship, and he was slaying all the other priests that were worshiping idols. But it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. It didn't run deep enough in the people. So if the people are not ready, then that's probably why Chizkiah could not be the Mashiach. People were not ready. Get ready. Get ready. That's what the Lubavitcher Rebbe told us. It's up to us. We're ready. The Mashiach will come. Gotta get ready. Are you ready, Hirsch?
Yes.
Hirsch is the most ready.
Not as convincing, Hirsch. I want to hear it. Yeah. Are you ready, Jacob?
I'm ready.
You're ready?
I'm ready.
Yes.
It's not going to be easy when Mashiach comes.
It's not easy right now before he's come.
It's not easy. I know. So it's going to get even harder. But
Yeah.
do you want it?
Absolutely.
Do you want it? Ariel, you ready?
Yeah, absolutely. It's hard, but
Yeah.
it's time.
They say that the Chafetz Chaim had a suit in his closet that was always ready for when Mashiach.
That's
Right?
amazing.
Another version that he had his bags packed. He had a packed suitcase waiting
Okay, what
for
was in
it
the
every
suitcase?
day.
If you know.
I imagine some undies and socks, but I don't know. Just whatever you need to go travel.
Those are the necessities.
Keep your passport valid. Who knows? Here in Israel, just keep your Rav Kav ready. Make sure you.
I like that.
Isn't there a tradition that yesterday, today, and tomorrow are fast days for some?
That we're going to talk
Can't
about.
fast-
We're going to
fast
talk
more than
about.
two.
There's more to talk about the 10th of Tevet, and that's coming. But this is the basis. Okay. Any other questions so far? Jacob? No. David? You're good. Amos.
Yeah, I have a question. Is like if someone has a Sheva Brachot after wedding and there is a fast, how they do it?
Good question. There are many times conflicts in Judaism, and that's really what halacha is all about. It's all about trying to figure out which takes precedence over what. And someone who's in the Sheva Brachot, I believe he does fast. Because it's a communal fast, and many times that overrides your personal joy. If it was communal joy, that overrides the fasting many times. But if it's just a private fast, a private joy, I believe he still has to fast the fast of Tevet to join the community. Luckily, it's a very short one.
Okay.
And we're around the other fast days of
It's
Yud
starting
Zayin
very
B'Tevet,
early.
Yud Zayin B'Tammuz. That's a bigger question because it's longer in the summertime. But the Tisha B'Av, you never have that problem because you're not getting married for the 7 days before that, according to most traditions. Okay, another question. I'll just go around the room and then we'll.
You remember in the book of Rabbi, it says that do the commandment and mitzvot, keep the Torah, and then you will prolong your days in the land.
Yeah, that's right.
So
We're seeing it
Yishai-
actually happening. What?
Yeah, Yishayahu actually did that. So he tried to change.
He
and
tried,
Then he
that's right.
extended the days.
Correct.
That
Correct.
really
Correct.
was-
Correct. This is the implementation of the promises of the rebuke, the covenant. Yeshua tried to renew the covenant, the Sefer HaBrit. He called it the Book of the Covenant. Not sure exactly what that means. Many times there's the Book of the Covenant that's mentioned in the Book of Dvarim, in the Sefer Torah, in the Book of Shemot. So which section exactly, Yoshiyahu was using or calling the Book of the Covenant this time could be just the renewed commitment. He called it a book, but it wasn't the Book of Covenant, which is mentioned in the Book of Shemot, the Book of Dvarim. It's unclear. But you're absolutely right. This is the we see it coming to life. Unfortunately, we see it coming to life. The deal that God made with us. That you have to keep the mitzvot and not worship foreign idols, or you'll be kicked out of the land. And the day came, and we were kicked out of the land. Okay. Other questions, Russell? You good?
I'm good.
Yeah. Hirsch, Thomas, Moshe, you with us?
I am with you.
Ariel.
Mm-hmm.
All good. Back to Ruben. Yeah.
Sorry.
It's okay. It's
This-
good.
Don't say sorry.
So Hizkiyahu and Yeshayahu, how do you
Yoshiyahu, the king we're
Yoshia,
talking
the
about today,
king,
is
yeah.
Yoshiyahu the king. Yes.
Hamelech, yeah,
Yeah.
Yoshia. What would they have?
I have a friend who named named his son Yoshiyahu. He was a big Tanakh guy. He just wrote a book on Habakkuk. Who writes a book on Habakkuk? Everybody know what is Habakkuk?
It's in the 12 minor prophets.
It's in the
Yeah.
12 minor prophets.
Betrayal
Exactly.
song.
I think I asked you this yesterday. Is he named his son Yoshiyahu? He was a friend with my son, and they called him Yoshi. Yoshi. Yeah. He's cute. Yeah. Good kid. Now he's a big kid. He's probably married, I think.
Yeah. I've always kind of wondered how would they have brought they both of them started these huge teshuva movements inside.
Right. Chizkiyahu and Yoshiyahu, right?
Yeah.
Right.
How could they? What would they say, or what would they do? Let's say they're prime minister of Israel.
Mm.
What would they say to do to bring about huge teshuva movement in Eretz Israel?
It's a good question. You're asking what should we do today, but why you're taking as your guiding archetype these two great kings. Ultimately, they were not successful. We want to do better than Chizkiyahu and better than Yoshiyahu, because Yoshiyahu didn't get deep into their hearts. We said that but you're right. It's good to look at success. They had some success, and it's a good question. I think I'm an educator. I believe in education. I think that's really key. That we have to teach Torah, teach the Jewish people Torah. Slowly but surely, the light of Torah will shine upon them and dwell in their hearts and inspire people to get with the program, as we say. But it's a good question. Yeah, Russell.
Yeah. So if leaders can't impose teshuva from top down and be successful, what are actions that leaders can take to make the people want it themselves?
I just answered that. I just answered that. I think education is
Okay,
very
so
key.
education,
Yeah,
do you
yeah.
think, so
yeah.
like leaders at the top, do you think they could just implement
There's a lot of
educators
good.
in place?
Yeah.
It's a bit vague to me. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I was
absolutely.
wanting to
Yeah.
hear more.
Yeah. Ultimately, education has to be implemented, has to be practiced as well, and but we're in a whole different situation now. We're in a world which is, growing secularity and agnosticism, if not atheism, and that they were dealing with. If you weren't worshiping God, you were worshiping an idol. Okay, so everybody believed in God. So we have to be smart about it. We have to recognize what the challenges of the generation are in terms of education, in terms of we can't just keep beating people on the head and say keep the mitzvot or we'll be kicked out of the land. Okay, that's just not going to work. I think it's good to.
It didn't work before.
It didn't work so well. You're right. It wasn't good enough. Yeah.
Well, if you want an analogy from modern day avodah zarah, think about celebrityism. People obsessing over celebrities, and obviously some people take it more extreme than others. But if you look at how some people obsess over celebrities, it looks like avodah zarah. It looks like they're worshiping them.
Okay, I hear. We
Or
got a lot.
politicians.
We got a lot of fixing to do.
American gods.
We got a lot of fixing to do. I think. What does it say on the American pennies?
In God we trust.
In God we trust. Some people actually bow down to the penny.
I have a $1 bill with
Or the dollar. And the dollar is the modern day avodah zarah that many people say. In the world of capitalism, that people are, the people they worship money. Thank you. Amos, go ahead.
My question is
Yeah,
about
turn
this,
around.
what is written
Yeah,
in
we
this
trust.
Which
Quran,
chapter? Which
which
verse?
is
Guys.
24,
Yeah.
24, verse 4.
24:4. Okay, everybody look at this
It's saying
question.
that
Yeah.
The Jerusalem with innocent blood, that he filled the Jerusalem with the innocent blood, which
Menachem did
the
that.
Lord would not pardon.
Right.
It means that after the judgment, then when they come back, the judgment was the day when the pardon was that we got the judgment, we got the to deal with a lot of people die and the temple was destroyed. Then it was rebuilt back. But after the judgment, that's always that you got the judgment and then you can get the new position or new life or how
Yeah,
I
so
can
there's
understand that.
okay, interesting. So there's two principles in Judaism I think that are key here. Number one is this is a big problem because we believe in tshuva. Yoshiyahu did tshuva. So why should the destruction come? I know God promised Menachem to bring the destruction, but why did he not pardon? Why did he not forgive him? So our answer was, we already said, is that it wasn't deep enough. It wasn't real tshuva, and if it was deep enough tshuva, then it he would have stopped and not brought the destruction whatsoever. Okay, but it's an excuse. The tshuva wasn't good enough. But if we still believe that if tshuva would be absolute, if it was really good, then he wouldn't have had brought the destruction at all. That's the first principle. And the second thing is you're saying that even after the punishment was brought, that we see that there was a second temple built and there was a revival of Judaism that came back. So that is the second principle, is that we believe that God is not forsaking his Jewish people. Even if we sin, we get punished, but ultimately God has a plan. He has a mission for us, and we're not doesn't end. Even if we get punished, but it's maybe that's all part of an educational process to teach us to take his word seriously and to do better next time. And we tried, and we didn't do so much better in the Second Temple period. But hopefully the third time around we'll do much better.
That would be the principle. I read somewhere that after penalty, we need to take the fellow like a brother because he got his already.
Yes.
That's the principle.
Yeah, sure.
And
Yeah,
that would be the same principle.
That's right. That's right. It's definitely, you get another chance. Yeah. Ruven?
I was just going to comment that we're so close to the temple being rebuilt. It just feels maybe
beautiful. I hear you. Sometimes I feel that way, and sometimes I feel so close and so far.
Yeah.
Because we're close. Here we are. Millions of Jews in the land of Israel. It hasn't ever happened in thousands of years. So much closer. We have a strong government. We have people learning Torah in Jerusalem. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable progress. And yet we still have a lot of fixing to do. We have a lot of fixing to do, right? We read these verses about Yoshiyahu. Even though he did so much, even in the religious realm, he got rid of the Avodah Zarah, cleaned up the temple, and even that was not enough because it wasn't really deep enough. So we really it's got to be real for this to work. And so we're so close yet. We have, I don't give up hope. No, never. We believe it, right? If we came back a second time, we'll coming back a third time. And God has a plan. God told us it's going to happen in the end. As the prophet said, it didn't happen the second time, it'll happen the third time. So it's going to happen sometime. But in terms of how close we are, I many times connect to what you're saying that, oh, wow, closer than ever, closer than thousands of years. It's a big thing. So got to appreciate every step, the tremendous strides that we've made. But ultimately, as I say, as an educator, and you read the Torah tells us there's so much more to redemption. And I also identify with those people who say, oh, you call this redemption because we have beautiful trains?
Yes.
And you call this redemption because you've got, nice Israeli shekel.
Yes.
And yes, I agree with that, but I also agree with the other side of the coin, and that is that we speak about redemption, we're speaking about spiritual redemption, about being, people connected to God, people living the words of God. How many people, we're all excited because almost over 90% of Jews in Israel light the Hanukkah candles. How many keep Shabbat? A complete halachic Shabbat. How many Jews, fast on Yom? A lot of Jews fast on Yom Kippur.
More than before as well.
I hope so. I hope it's growing, but there's a lot of work to be done. And we talked about foreign culture and the a lot of people are taken in by Western civilization, and we talked about it on Hanukkah, right? How we ultimately there's good to be gained, but we have to be true to our tradition, and there's a lot of work to be done. A lot of work, a lot of deep plowing the psyche of the Jewish people. But who knows? It could happen very quickly. the state of Israel 100 years ago, who would have imagined that we'd be where we are today? Could happen very, very quickly. So I got my suit ready and my bag packed. Luckily, as I said today, all I have to do is have my driver's license ready. And
Well, it has changed a lot very quick.
it
Very
could
quickly.
change very quickly.
Well, it already has. What year did you make Aliyah? You made in
25 years ago, 28 years.
Okay, well, you know, if you talk to
29
Rav
years
Listman,
ago, 30
you
years.
talk to Rav Listman about what it was like being here, like even up until the early '80s. Israel was a very
I've seen
place to live.
tremendous change, 100%, and I appreciate every step, and it's amazing, and blows my mind. And I say the Hallel and Yom Ha'atzmaut with a full heart full of gratitude and appreciation, and it's wondrous, and I'm starry-eyed many hours of the day and many days of the year. But I'm just saying that I think being starry-eyed is not helpful. It's not an educational plan, and we have to realize that there's still a ways to go. That's my approach. I think that together with all that joy and tremendous wonder at the great successes and strides that have happened so quickly, so who knows, the rest of the journey could happen very quickly too. I'm ready. I'm hoping that we can, but there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. That's all I'm saying. There's a lot of work to be done, and that's our job. That's why I'm teaching. That's why you guys are all learning, because you're going to go out and you're going to build those Jewish homes and continue to live the Torah life yourselves and teach your children to live the Torah lives. Hopefully, influence the people you work with, the people you live with, to be better and better Jews, and ultimately, the entire Jewish people will do tshuva, as we say. And we'll have more and more in gathering of the exiles. We're still only halfway there. Almost. Half of the Jews are in Israel, not all of them. So we appreciate Amir. We haven't had a gathering of the exiles like this in thousands of years. So, but we're not finished. We're not finished. They could all come tomorrow in a second. What is El Al for? What did we build the big airport for? All right, we got to get rid of this tiny little thing called Omicron first, and the Corona stuff. But we'll pass that, B'ezrat Hashem, and we'll keep progressing. Yes, Amos.
Well, my question is it's connected with what you say about the Messiah also. Like, we need to be ready. That means the nation need to be ready.
Yeah.
Then I was in Haifa in the port last week with my car sending back. But
okay.
I was on the German place. It was like in central of Europe, the whole Christmas trees, everything, and there wasn't kosher store at all. I can get my food there.
I see.
And I was like,
well, you can.
I was shocked. I didn't expect
it's
that
not.
at all.
It's very hard
all
to
of Israel
find a
doesn't look
kosher-
like Jerusalem, right? It's a different feel, and it's a
Especially
different.
you go north, you hardly find.
That's what I say. We have a lot to fix.
It's-
We have a lot to
But
fix.
how is it connected with the Messiah coming? That if you ask us if we are ready, okay, we work hard to be ready, but then the whole nation is not ready at all. In some places,
I can only tell you my conclusion. My conclusion
Yeah.
is to become an educator.
Yes.
I think that's the best way. Other people's solution is to go into the government, and other people are showing their way by showing that they're religious Jews that are like the best doctors in the world. There's many different paths that show the beauty of Torah to the other Jews. You can do anything. Ultimately, our goal is that the entire Jewish people should go back to their roots and live the beautiful ideal life of justice and connection to God that we're hoping for. But we're not there yet. We haven't finished. Yeah.
Two things related to rebuild the temple, the Messiah. I hear once from a friend that there is a time limit for the Messiah to come.
So what?
There's
What is
another
that?
generation.
I hear that, but
is the source?
I'm not sure.
Listen, some
And
people
he
say
didn't give me a source.
Right,
Also,
right.
This I'm asking. If
Right.
there is something.
the Talmud says that tipach rucham shel chash v'kitzim, that the people who try to calculate when the end is going to come, they should expire. Their souls should expire. It's a curse. So the Talmud curses out those people who try to make the calculations about when the redemption is going to come. Now there is a tradition that there's a cycle of 7,000 years.
Yeah, this
Oh, yeah, I
exactly
heard
that.
that. I read
You read this, you heard this, right?
Yeah, that's the
And
one.
that so towards the end of the 6,000 years,
Yeah, we are
we're
close.
up to year 5,
We are close.
7,
7,800.
82.
880. So it's
So
less
if you
than-
calculate up to the 6,000
200.
years, and then that 7,000 years, that's like Mashiach is coming. People make all these calculations, but in the past they make calculations too, and they were wrong. And the Talmud tells us don't make those calculations. So don't live your life by all sorts of calculations. I've heard a few calculations. There's interesting stuff, but by no means do we know.
Yeah.
Don't know.
No, but there is
Don't have prophets
some
today.
source or something that talk about like the Shabbos millennium,
Yeah.
like because we are very close.
As I said, I didn't quote you where exactly that appears. This tradition that there's a cycle 7,000 years. Unfortunately, you may have heard this. I don't know, but there's also a cycle of 7 times 7. And the Kabbalists get into this idea, and they say I think in some Kabbalists say we're in the 3rd of the 7 cycles. So who knows, right? You Yovel, it's all based on Yovel, right? The concept that there's 7 years of Shemitah and then 7 cycles of Shemitah, and then you get to the Yovel. The Yovel, that's the ultimate redemption. So, but we don't know this stuff. That we're not supposed to live our lives that way. We're supposed to follow the Torah, and but it's exciting that we're getting closer. We can feel it. We can see it.
The time seems that it's running fast.
That's also a sign. There's a few signs in the Talmud.
Yeah, and we see like a global movement and everything.
They
like
say-
the crazy stuff.
In some ways, they say that the darkest of night is right before the dawn. Right? So
So, and
when we see bad things happening,
Yeah.
and we say, "Oh, we're worse than we ever were," we say, "Well, maybe that's a sign that the ultimate redemption is coming soon." But we don't know. We don't know. I don't have a stop. watch.
they're like like a conspiracy theory. But we see in the news today that's a global government. There's a global stuff going on. So they trying to find like solutions for all the problems. Let's say the environment.
Sounds nice.
everything.
Sounds great.
And
sounds great.
Someone will come up with a government.
Amazing.
So
Amazing.
this could be like
Maybe
a
it'll be
Messiah.
from the Davidic line. Who knows?
Yeah.
Right?
So it's hard to say. It's hard to understand. But,
We don't know what it's gonna look like. We know it's coming sometime, somewhere.
So Yeshayahu, the Hamelech,
Stop here.
Yeah.
Yoshiyahu. Yoshiyahu. Say yo,
Yoshiyahu.
man. Say yo.
Yoshiyahu,
That's good.
Yoshiyahu. So he was 8 when he became king.
He had 31 years means he died at 39.
What year was the Teshuvah? Like how
Oh,
far into his
does it
reign?
say? We read it. I don't remember. I think it was 11 years into his reign. It says
So he was night.
he was
19.
19. Yeah,
That's
amazing.
amazing.
Amazing, huh?
It's quite a feat for a teenager.
Not bad. Not bad. It's like nowadays, right? The young people run the world. Zuckerberg and these multi-billionaires are